What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Hello and welcome to Corona Cinema. In these trying times where everything's shut down, including movie theatres, we decided to create our own virtual cinema and screen 4 films each week based around a particular theme. This week, despite all the shit show that's going on in the world, it actually is Pride Month in June. So we're doing LGBTQ movies. Now playing Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Moonlight, Brokeback Mountain, and Call Me By Your Name. I don't care if you're moving slow or fast, as long as it's my direction. I'm your host, Liam Waite, and I'm joined as always by Ross.
Hello.
Matty.
Good evening.
And Mason.
You all right?
And we are starting with my pick this week, which was Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which only came out February 28th of this year in the UK. Set in France in the late 18th century, the film tells the story of a forbidden affair between an aristocrat and a painter commissioned to paint her portrait. Written and directed by Céline Sciamma, starring Noémie Merlan and Adèle Haenel, nominated for Best Foreign Language Film at the Golden Globes and BAFTAs, but France submitted Les Miserables for the consideration at the Oscars, a decision which has already aged poorly just a few months later. Yeah, I watched this for the first time the other day. I was quite excited for it. I've had a lot of buzz around it for about 5-6 months now, and I'd watched one of Sciamma's films before this, and since then I've watched another one of her films, and they all kind of deal with the similar themes. Like, she's a lesbian herself, the director and writer, and she was actually in a relationship for 10 years with Adèle Haenel, one of the stars of this film. And yeah, all her films kind of deal with identity and sexual awakening and stuff like that. And she's very conscious of giving females overall, but also lesbians a voice in cinema. And I think this film is where she's been. Everything she's been trying to achieve, it seems like it's all been realized in this film. I think this is pretty much a masterpiece. It's just a very dignified, tender portrayal of female relationships that you don't really see. Usually when girls are naked in film, it's through the male gaze. It's like an American Pie or some shit. This is where it's not even for we're 4 guys watching this film and there's a naked woman, but it never feels sordid as it can be in most other films. I feel that's best exemplified with her armpit hair. That you'd never include that in a film where you're trying to portray these women as something appealing for men. Whereas in this film, it's no, this is for us as lesbian women, and we don't care how it is for how we're going to present ourselves for men. And thinking about the theme of presenting yourself, the first 45 minutes is probably my favorite part of the film from a filmmaking standpoint. She's literally falling in love with a person by studying every feature of her to try best present them in this portrait. And in that bit as well, I just love the tracking shots and the side-on shots when she's trying to steal a glance at her face because she wants to be able to get the details so she can make this painting. And I like Adèle Haenel's character. I can't remember her name. The Countess's daughter. She doesn't want to say it again.
Heloise.
Oh yeah. She doesn't want to be painted and presented in a way that's something that's false. She doesn't feel anyone can do her justice and present her in a way she wants to be shown to the world. And it's a story of both women fighting for agency, for independence, because their lives are being constructed for them. The only reason they're there is because of what the men in their lives are basically doing. And there's no men in this film apart from the guy who takes her to the island, and then also all the men at the art gallery and stuff at the end. But it's just interesting, these women are surviving in a male-dominated world where there's no men pretty much on the film or on the island for the whole film, yet the males are still exerting influence over them. And I thought that was just a really interesting way for the director to make a statement. And one thing I saw in the interview that she did, which I thought was really interesting, other kind of symbolic stuff within the film. The first time they kiss on the beach, where they both have the veils on and they each take the veil off. She said, Céline Sciamma, she said that was a form of consent. And that's she thought that was a good way to kind of symbolized that, which I thought was really good and really interesting. And even like some of the side characters, mainly just one side character really. You have the maid. Like she could have been, at first when she was getting a bit more screen time, I was like, oh, you're kind of just taking us away from the two main draws of the film, the two main characters. But even she's given like a solid storyline and like treated as equal despite being the maid. And like I really like that shot with the three of them where like she's like sewing, the other two girls are cooking, and they're all in the same shot, all doing like housework, doing chores to show they're all on the same level, they're all together. They're not being pitted against each other, which like women often can be. And then when she falls pregnant, like in a lot of stories that would see her kind of shunned, especially in 18th century, I'd imagine like she'd be shunned and like cast aside, but she's not ostracized by the women on the island. Like they're like, okay, let's find a solution to this, do what we need to do. So I was like another really like strong kind of like social political message. The director makes you wait before you get to see, I forgot her name again, Heloise, that's it. It makes you wait, like I feel like you wait like 20-25 minutes before you actually get to see her, which I thought was really effective. So yeah, I really thought it was really great. Mason, what did you make of it going in first time?
First experience, I only watched it today. It really like sat well with me, and it felt so high quality as you're watching it. I don't think the budget is even that high for the film, and yet it seems like it achieves a lot in so many different aspects. Like you said, like sort of summarizing what you said, really. But I love like the camera angles in the film. The acting is incredible. Considering as well that the film is basically set either in like 2 rooms in that house or the beach, you don't get bored. And I think it's a credit to the acting of the leads in the film, because you're able just to kind of get lost in what's happening. And then, like you said, you're allowed to witness this person fall in love with Heloise, simply just like you said, through studying her face. And when it was all about art at first, I was like, oh, fucking hell, I'm not really interested in art. I feel like this is going to like fall a bit flat for me. But that it's literally not the case. Like I literally found myself like suddenly really interested in like even the scenes where for like 3 minutes you'll just watch her paint. It wasn't even boring, and I didn't even think the film was trying to be like up his own arse and create some sort of like atmosphere or anything. Like it just works really well because the film slows down in those sections, but allows you to sort of appreciate like the process that she's going through and sort of like the beauty that she's trying to understand of the character. And yeah, I feel like it's going to be one of those films where like when I sort of like try to like digest it in the next few days, I feel like you said, it's just going to sort of shoot up in like my rankings of films I've seen.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned before, what makes it stand out for me, there's loads of stuff, like it's a really extremely well-made film, but the main thing is the build up to them like sharing their first kiss and having this like love affair is unique to anything else I've really seen. Like often you can have like once the like the couple at the center of like the romance gets together, like you see their like chemistry and stuff and you believe they're like in love or whatever. But in this, like the idea of her having to study her face, study her body in order to paint her as a way to kind of fall in love with her is just something really fascinating and unique to me. Ross, is that something that you felt like this is a really different way to get to know a person, essentially?
Yeah, and it's really effective as well from the acting, because she's like, what's the woman plays Heloise, how like mysterious she kind of is. It makes it really effective to watch, and you're like going on a journey with the lead. I can't remember her name, but you're going like a journey with her, understanding Heloise and like trying to get around her, this mysteriousness, and it almost makes you feel like you're there with them, especially because it's like the scenery and the setting on this kind of like vast landscape. It's beautiful landscape as well. It's amazing, the scenery there, like when they're on the beach and stuff. But yeah, it works really well. Kind of understanding this woman with her, and it makes a brilliant watch.
The main character's name is Marianne. As we go forward, Marianne and Heloise. Okay, Matty, as our resident artist on the podcast, did you enjoy the film from a portrait and painting standpoint?
Yeah, so one of the things I did enjoy from this film that I couldn't really take from all the others was seeing the process in the way that she went about drawing someone and then eventually going on to paint. I thought that was really interesting, the way she talks about capturing form and like the hue like that she would take from the ears to match the cheeks. And I wish they talked a little bit more about that, but in terms like Mason said, like that's not something that everyone would want to take from the film. Just something I found personally really interesting. And then you're also watching the way that she captured getting her own artist's block, quite interesting. Led me to think whether they used a separate actor for the hands for when she was sketching. I probably would think so. Um, but yeah, I did really enjoy the film, and I thought it was a really well suited film. It wasn't forceful in any way. When you look at what the film's doing, it's a lesbian film with an almost all woman cast, pretty much, with a woman director. And there are films that have tried to do similar things before that have just been so much in your face and met so much resistance. But this just did it so naturally, and it works really, really well. And you're rooting for the characters all the way through. And like you said, like the first kiss is really like the tension and then the apprehension and the teasing of this built on through the film works perfectly. And as you mentioned before, it lost out at the Caesar Awards, which are the French equivalent to the Oscars, for Best Director anyway. It lost out to Roman Polanski's Officer and a Spy, which is the main actress Adele Haniel, I think that's how you say it. She walked out when that happened because Roman Polanski is like a convicted paedophile, having raped someone who was 13 or 12 of age, and then also accused like a year later of raping like an 18-year-old as well. And the fact that it's not like accused with the 12-year-old, it's like it's convicted, and then he's still out making work. He's out winning awards still. And then she feels quite strong. It's a big slap in the face because she's been a victim of sexual assault as well before, through the ages of 12 to 15. It's just kind of like, it's a bit grim on French cinema's part that they still allow these things kind of to happen. And then there's other things to be taken from the plot is very simplistic. Like, this is the way things are. The times aren't progressive enough to allow a relationship like theirs to persist, but they can still make the most of the time they have. And the fact that the times cannot be changed and they're making their peace with it. And one quote that sticks with me is don't regret, remember instead. And then that's captured in the last scene with her just remembering as she's listening to the music, the realization and the changing of things. So yeah, I really enjoyed the film. I do think it's the strongest of the bunch that we have here.
Yeah, I think often with these kind of romance films, and it happens in particularly Call Me By Your Name, another film we're going to discuss, and sort of in Brokeback Mountain, the idea that there's like a ticking time clock on the time they get to be together, kind of thing. Because there's that moment when they realize when they first kiss, then it's like, oh my god, we've wasted so much time. We could have been doing this the whole time and not have, because then they realize once this little trip is over, that's kind of it for their romance. There's always an element of time running out in these kind of romantic films. And you mentioned the thing that happened at the César Awards. I think that adds like another, like a meta kind of layer to this film, because like Celine Sciamma was big on like gender politics and the idea of men having kind of superiority in that sense, and the idea that her film about with those kind of themes lost out to someone like Roman Polanski, who's, as you say, is like a convicted pedo, like kind of very much as you say, a slap in the face. Mason, were you aware of that what happened at the César, that the incident that happened and them all walking out? Like, I think Adele Hanel led the charge, and everyone associated with the film kind of backed her.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it must have been on Twitter that I got like notified about that. I didn't relate it to this film, so I think I remember just sort of hearing about what had happened, but yeah, not knowing any names and stuff like that until Matty said, and I was like, as soon as Matty said it, I was like, oh shit, yeah, what the hell? I didn't realize that was one of the actresses from this film. But like Matty said, it's so sort of insulting for anyone affected by that to still be able to celebrate people who have been convicted of stuff. And like you said, it sort of paints a bad light within the industry to be able to say, basically, you can get away with that and still be able to be rewarded for your work. And I don't know, it definitely doesn't sit right, does it? And I'm glad that a stance was sort of taken instead of just accepting it, because I feel like to walk out of an award ceremony is definitely very like frowned upon, and it's not like the etiquette that you'd see from typical sort of celebrities and stuff like that. But it's a big move, and I think especially after stuff like when you have like the Me Too movement, it is very wild of that like award ceremony to even consider nominating, let alone awarding a character like that.
I think since then, the board that runs the awards have all resigned due to this fact. I'm not sure what else has been done. I think none of the awards have been changed, but it definitely did make a stir, and it's good that she's still keeping up the momentum.
And let's hope things keep changing for the better. And but Ross, based on your experience with this film, would you be interested in going back and looking at some of the other stuff that she's done?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the directing in this film is so good. I mean, I really love the use of sound in this film, because it's like how we watched a couple of weeks ago, No Country for Old Men, which doesn't really have a score. And this is similar when in general it doesn't have a score, but the only music you hear within the film is the diegetic sound, is what is actually playing in the film. And it works really well. And kind of, I was going to say the use of kind of, you're just kind of there on the beach with them with the sound, the wind and the sea crashing. It's really effective. But yeah, I mean, Celine Sciamma, like even this year at the Oscars, like they're looking. It's ridiculous how women still aren't getting nominated for Best Director, and she literally would have been the perfect candidate to put in there, because this film's directed so well. And I think I will go and watch one or two films by her, because the way she handled this film, I couldn't see any way to do it better, really.
And another thing I picked up as well is, you know how Ross said it feels like you're sort of with them throughout the film, sort of going through the experience with them. I feel like that also helps where the film starts asking with her pupils asking like, oh, what painting is this, blah, blah, blah. And then you're basically told this story of the origins of this painting. And then it flashes back to that at the end with that nice little message where she was like, oh, you drew me sad here. Why? And she was like, you were sad. She's like, oh, but I'm happy now. Like it kind of just like rounds off the film so nicely. And it's just a really good film.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say, that they broke up the film in the middle with the films of like the old methods that they would use to try and have an abortion, which is quite interesting, because that's something I've never really seen in a film before. I feel like that's something a bit more shunned in filmmaking, and something that's like explicitly between women, especially because they wouldn't even let the man know that she was even pregnant in the first place. And then the fact that they would then go to actually paint and draw and make a point of cataloguing this was quite interesting as well, that these things shouldn't be forgotten. I thought that was a nice, interesting take, and it broke up the pace of the film as well.
So we can get our ratings for this film, and I'll start. I gave this a 9. Matty?
I gave this an 8.7.
Mason?
Same as Matty. I gave it an 8.7. I think it just does so much well. And to be honest, I feel like if I'd watched this earlier on in the week and then I let it sort of like digest and let me think about it, I think I probably would have given it higher. But yeah, for now, it's easily an 8.7.
Ross?
Yeah, there's not much they could have done better with this film, really. I gave it 8.8.
Okay, so we'll move on to Mason's pick, which is Moonlight from 2016. A young African-American man grapples with his identity and sexuality while experiencing the everyday struggles of childhood, adolescence, and burgeoning adulthood. Written and directed by Barry Jenkins, who won Best Adapted Screenplay and was nominated for directing, starring Mahershala Ali, Naomi Harris, and Trevante Rhodes, with Ali winning Best Supporting Actor and Harris nominated for Supporting Actress. The film's final Oscar made it the first LGBTQ and all-black movie to win Best Picture. Mason, why did you pick this film?
So the first time I ever heard about this film was during the Oscar ceremony when La La Land was announced to be the winner, and then it was actually Moonlight who won. And I was always kind of confused as to how like this film sort of went under my radar if it was going to be nominated for Best Picture. And I kind of pinpointed that down to me maybe just not being into films much at that point, maybe. But I watched this film for the first time, I think just over a year ago. I didn't watch it in the best setting. I remember just watching it when I was hungover. I didn't really want to watch it, but I was like, "Do you know what? I'm going to try and watch all of the Oscar-nominated films from that year and sort of make my mind up on what I thought should have won." So I kind of watched it like almost like I felt like I was forced to watch it. Didn't really enjoy it, to be honest, the first time round. I now pinpoint that down to me being hungover. But watching it the second time round, I watched it today, and this film is so good. Like I looked back on its IMDb page, and it has a 99 Metascore, which obviously is wild to have a Metascore that high. But the film delivers in so many ways. I think the acting alone is incredible. I love the idea that they age the main character and get 3 different actors to do it, to show within a film that's not even 2 hours long, you basically get to see a massive chunk of this guy's life along with everyone sort of associated with it. I also really appreciate how Mahershala Ali was nominated and won Best Supporting Actor for this film. When, if you even counted his screen time, I doubt it's like anything more than like 20 minutes. And then when you compare that to his nomination for, say, Green Book, where realistically he was the lead, this seems a lot more fitting and a lot more justified to win that award. Other things I really enjoyed about the film was that it's sort of split up into the chapters, and then each time you go into the chapter, you're presented with a new actor for the lead. I really enjoyed that because, like I said, it allows the pace of the film to sort of progress in an almost like natural way without sort of feeling like what the fuck, where's this massive chunk gone? I don't know, I think there's a few things with the film that I guess I don't enjoy as much as the rest of the film. I think the third section, like the third chunk of the film, isn't as strong. And although I'm going to kind of contradict what I just said about how it helps it progress easily, it's a bit jarring how the first 2 sections work really well. Like I feel like I can accept that jump from like ages because it works. But with the third one, it feels like such a massive jump within this guy's life. And I felt really interested to sort of see what had gone on within that gap. But I guess sort of when you do look at sort of the message of the film and what it's trying to achieve, you don't need to know that. The whole idea is that you just want to get this sort of full circle experience with him and I forgot the other guy that he gets with sort of earlier on in the film. That the reason you sort of do jump forward is to allow that storyline to sort of run its course and see how that sort of all ends up. I enjoyed seeing Janelle Monáe in the film as well. I've only seen her in Hidden Figures, I'm pretty sure, is the only one I've seen her in. I enjoyed her performance in that, and then again in this, similar to Mahershala Ali, she's not in it for very long, but she's allowed to sort of just embrace the role, and she is presented as that sort of loving, not mother type, because obviously she isn't the main character's mother, but yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot that works really well for me in this film, especially when it comes to like the acting and stuff like that. And all in all, I'm really glad I rewatched it and chose it this week, because comparing it to the first time I watched it, I didn't plan to watch it again. I was like, it's boring. I don't see why it even got the Oscar. But yeah, second time around, it was considerably better.
Yeah, you mentioned how little screen time Mahershala Ali gets, and that's like one of 2 complaints I have with the film. Is like I wish I just got more of him. Like, obviously, it's not in service of the story. Like, they can use him how they needed to use him, but I just wanted so much more of him because he was like ridiculously good. And I think the thing that makes him so unique is he's part of this like vicious circle of like he's trying to teach Sharon, he's trying to educate him, trying to empower him, take care of him, and he's like questioning his mum about how she's neglecting her child and abusing him, but she's on drugs and the drugs are sold by him. And it's like mad when you put it like that. Like, you don't even know it's like hard to tell who's in the wrong in that situation where like the morality kind of lies. So yeah, really, but overall, like, it's just an incredible film with some incredible performances. Matty, what did you make of it? I think was this the first time you watched it?
Yeah, this was the first time I've seen this film. And I'm glad I waited until now to watch it so I could fully appreciate it compared to all the other films as well this week. So this is the last I watched. And it is the camera work is really interesting. It's almost like it's eerie, orchestral, and quite delicate as well. and at the same time confrontational. Like you'll get whole periods where after the scene they'll play this kind of eerie music, and then that character that has just been exposed to the scene will just be staring right down at the camera for even up to a minute, and it almost gives you time to just kind of reflect on what has just transpired in that scene, and to make you think how it's affecting that person. You can kind of tell from the reaction and the expression on that person's face how they're reacting to that scene, whether they let on in the scene to that person their actual feelings, then to the camera. You get an idea without having an inner narrative. I think that's quite a powerful tool that I haven't really seen used before. And also, I think for the film to switch actors 3 times for 2 of the characters can sometimes be quite jarring for the audience to watch. And it threw me off a little bit. I didn't realize the child Kevin was the same as the teenage Kevin. But other than that, I think it worked really well. And at first, when you see the change, you're like, oh, geez, that's quite a big change between characters. But then you realize 10 years difference. And I think they pulled it off really well. And that kind of gives lots of other actors lots of chances to play. And I think the acting in this is really, really strong. Seeing the way the main character Little relapses depending on who he's with, the same like he'll relapse back into how he was as a kid when he sees people from his childhood, even though he's kind of made a charade of who he wants to be or who he feels like he could be so people can't hurt him, working like selling drugs and all this kind of thing. And then as soon as he sees Kevin again, he almost relapses and turns into the shy boy again. That's really quite strong writing and acting for the film to use.
One thing I liked is, like we talked about, like the idea of thug life on the Hate You Give podcast we did the other day, like the idea that he's being hated on. Obviously, this is not for his race in this instance. This is for him being hated on for his perceived sexuality. I didn't even know if he was gay at that point, but he's getting bullied for it. And in this case, like you have that long shot of when he's coming into the classroom just before he beats him over the head with a chair. I like that. I like the way that was filmed as well, like really building it up before it happened. So like he's being hated on for his sexuality, and that drives him to commit a crime. Then presumably I think he goes to prison after that, and then that sets him on a course of ending up being a drug dealer and stuff. So again, it's showing how like, yeah, the hate you give these kids can see their lives like spiral out of control. Ross, is that something you found to be interesting after we talked about the idea of hatred on that podcast the other day, the idea that he's being hated on for his sexuality and then he ends up committing a crime and his life kind of goes off the rails, kind of?
Yeah, because it's the same idea as that. As like when in The Hate You Give, when she's in the school, she kind of has to hide her blackness. And when he's at school, when he's around other people at his school, he has to kind of hide who he truly is. And it has the same effect, but I think the acting in this one is so strong as well, especially from the middle one, the Chiron's, the second story. I really like that. But yeah, it's a kind of the struggle. It really, really well shows the struggles of growing up in a place where it would be hard to be homosexual. But yeah, I think we touched on earlier the cinematography, and it works so well. And it's like, I noticed when watching it that when he's in this kind of stable situation, when he's with Juan, and when he's on the beach with Kevin and stuff, the camera's still, and you're like in the moment with them. When he's with his mum, when he's getting beaten up, that kind of stuff, it's handheld and kind of shaky, and the background's blurred out, it's shallow focus, and it works really well, and it brings a lot really like good effect to the film. And another thing I really like about this film, it hasn't got any like weird subplots in it. Nothing takes you away from that main story, and that's why I think this, even though it skips through time twice, it works really well, because the parts that are in this film, they're paced so well and consistently, and I think that's what works so well about this film in particular.
You spoke about it earlier, Leon, where Mahershala Ali's character is like trying to like tell her to get her shit together, and then she's like, "But you're the one fucking up my life," basically. And I think like the emotional like release in that scene is just madness to me, because like you genuinely see Mahershala Ali's character as being like he's trying. His acting just perfectly portrays this person trying to like come to terms with the fact that he's trying to tell her to sort her life out, but he is literally like arguably one of the reasons why her life is fucked up, because he's supplying her with these drugs. And as he's like walking away, you just see this like confusion, just like that feeling of like, what the fuck do I do? Yeah, and I feel like that scene alone is something that really stuck out to me second time around watching it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the second time I watched it as well, and same with me. It was better the second time I watched it. I think it's maybe because I knew what to expect, but watching it this second time, it's that first story with Mahershala Ali. It's just so good. Like, it perfectly sets up the rest of the film in a way that it's kind of put him on his track for the ending. But yeah, it's the acting's so good from Mahershala Ali because it's, as you say, he's trying to be this role model, and that scene when he's in the sea holding him up is so powerful. And when he asks him if he sells drugs, and he has to face that question, and it's just you in the room, silence and still camera. It works so well, and as I say, perfectly sets up the rest of the film.
We'll get some ratings. Start with you, Mason.
I really enjoyed it, like I said, especially second time round. I think the acting, cinematography, it all just amounts to a great film, and there's a reason why it won Best Picture. So I gave it 8.9.
Ross?
Yeah, really, really strong film. I gave it an 8.7.
Matty?
I gave it an 8.5.
And like Ross, I gave it an 8.7. Okay, we'll move on to Matty's pick, which is Brokeback Mountain from 2005. The story of a forbidden and secretive relationship between two cowboys and their lives over the years. Directed by Ang Lee and co-written by Larry McMurtry and Diana Osana, starring Heath Ledger, Jake Gyllenhaal and Michelle Williams, who were nominated for Best Actor, Supporting Actor, and Supporting Actress, respectively. It's the LGBTQ film that should have been the first to win Best Picture. Obviously, Moonlight took that in the end, but Brokeback Mountain lost to Crash, controversially. But it won for directing, adapted screenplay, and its score. Matty, why did you pick this film?
So obviously, I'd heard a lot about this film. Seemed like it had been a main issue of like discussion and controversy, and I'd never seen it. So I kind of leapt to the opportunity to pick it for this, and especially as well, like Jake Gyllenhaal is like a brilliant actor, but obviously Heath Ledger, having only produced a finite amount of films in the time that he had, makes all of those films that much more kind of potent and something I really want to explore. So that's the main reason that I chose the film. And then obviously, then the reason why I would continue to support the film is just the level of acting is crazy as well. And also the visuals, like the harshness of the landscape and then the work they had to do in the landscape as well. Like Brokeback Mountain, like it is a really beautiful place. And it's just interesting. It's not boring how slow the first 40 minutes are and how they kind of just develop the characters and you just get a feel for them. And then you can also see the characters kind of sizing each other up throughout the film, which is really interesting. And then it's also kind of a take on the society that they've reared them. I think both characters talk about if any of them showed any kind of homosexual traits throughout the film, like their fathers would have beaten the shit out of them, or they've both heard stories of people who've just been like, I think Heath Ledger's dad took him to see a body of a man who had been killed because he was gay. And it kind of both, like very early on in the film, it sets that precedent of this is not really an option as a way of life. And if it is something you're going to pursue, you're going to do it quietly. So that level of injustice always hits quite hard with the audience. And then also something that's not like a fairy tale, that's something respective of stuff that goes on in America and all over the world necessarily, but like especially like that's a natural society that these things do happen. And there was even like the backwards culture still exists because like in Utah they still cancelled theater shows during they were trying to produce the film because of its nature. Like there was still resistance from the film even when it came out, which is still quite baffling that people would still try and censor this or feel that it just wouldn't be right to make a film about it. And then also the fact that it lost to Crash at the Oscars. I haven't seen Crash, but the way Leon talks about it, I don't think it's as good as Brokeback Mountain. So whether there's an agenda going on there as well kind of remains to be seen, which is also a conversation that people usually don't want to have. And and also watching Anne Hathaway and Michelle Williams in this film as well, the way they deal with the conflict between their husbands, and then leading to all the different kind of like conversations that they will or won't have, and how they deal with it. It's quite interesting. And then how Heath Ledger, also the relationship he has with his daughters, particularly one of his daughters, and how that goes about. It's all just really interesting interactions. It was also nice to see David Harbour in this film as well, cropping up, and then seeing that this closeted nature of these relationships might be a little bit more widespread, and the fact that you really don't know because no one's going to go shouting about it. It might be hugely more common than people expect, which is also another interesting thing. The only small bit of ambiguity I think they left with the film was the nature of Jake Gyllenhaal's death, whether he actually died how they said he died via an accident of exploding inner tube, or whether he was lynched. I don't know if lynched is the right word. Killed. Whether David Harbour had a hand in that, or they were both just caught, because they mentioned David Harbour going up to the farm or the cabin. But overall, I really enjoyed the film. And yeah, it was just interesting, and I just wish Heath Ledger had done more films while he could.
Yeah, I'm gonna save the discussion about like what happened with Jake Gyllenhaal's death for the end, before we just talk about some other stuff with the film, because I think that was really some interesting stuff surrounding that. But yeah, I like how it shows how they develop a connection when, like, at the start with like Ennis says, I haven't talked this much in a year. Like, this is something like similar, like he's just been, I don't know if I'm guessing he was with Michelle Williams before that. Like they were just a couple before they got married, and like so he probably wasn't really chatting to her. They didn't really have a connection because obviously he was repressing these feelings. So now he's actually with someone who he can like bond with, and he feels comfortable around him. So he starts actually talking. But it's something I didn't like. I'm not sure what to read into. I was saying that to Matt the other day. Like the first time they have sex is like really like kind of like aggressive, and it's similar to the sex scene that he has with his wife. Like kind of just bends her over and just goes out. There's no like intimacy. Whereas the second time I mean with Jack and Ennis is where it's more like, I don't know, like kind of passionate and just more intimate. So I wasn't sure. Maybe that's because like the first time they had sex, it was like he wasn't sure what was going on. This probably obviously the first time he would have done that, I guess, with a man, maybe like he wasn't really sure. So it's just like get it over with. And maybe that's the same thing with the wife, just get it over with because there's no connection there. Don't know. Mason, did you have any thoughts on the way that was shot? Because it was weird because they shot the director, like the way he shot those two sex scenes was really similar. So I wasn't sure what to read into that.
I'm not saying it's rapey, but like you get like some very like wild vibes when you're watching like that scene the first time round. I was like, fucking hell, like it kind of come out of nowhere, especially for Heath Ledger's character. But like you said, I guess like as the film sort of progresses, I think it's sort of like seeing Heath Ledger's character kind of open up to the whole thing, because it's sort of like Jake Gyllenhaal's character is somewhat comfortable with his sexuality in that sense, to where he's willing to risk like trying to get lads and stuff like that. But Heath Ledger's character is much more, like you said, suppressed. So that's probably just shown from between those scenes, like from the first time they have sex to the second time. It's probably just Heath Ledger either like coming to terms with it. Because I feel like you're sort of presenting the idea that Jake Gyllenhaal has probably done this before, but for Heath Ledger's character, this seems a bit more like wild and a bit more like sort of taboo. And yeah, I think thanks to sort of not Jake Gyllenhaal, thanks to Heath Ledger's acting, I think you do sort of get that questioning thing about what is going on with his characters, like going on in his character's head at the moment, really.
Yeah, you can see they're never like quite content with their lives apart from each other. The excitement when they link up again, when he comes to his house, and they like passionately like greet each other, and like you could tell like, yeah, they're just desperate to be together, but they can't. So that brings up like an interesting thing for me. Like, obviously that the way they like greet each other is just so bait. Like, allow it, like your wife's right there, she's gonna see. And obviously it does end up seeing. And ultimately, like, obviously they're two homosexuals who can't tap into that part of their lives, because they obviously, like May said, they have a chance they could end up being killed. But ultimately they're still like cheating on their wives. And it's like complicated. Like it's always like you could like almost call it unethical, because like the wife's devastated when she sees that her husband is, like, obviously because he's gay, but also because he's cheating on her. And but then at the same time, it's like the two men couldn't have a relationship in this time. So it's kind of a weird kind of ethical situation. Ross, do you have any thoughts on that kind of idea?
Yeah, it's a weird one because you obviously support them and you want them to be together, but I think the film kind of wants you to look around, whether it's right or wrong, and just kind of understand that they're being repressed. Well, they can't be who they are, basically. And I think one of the best examples of that, that they've been hiding it for so long, is on the Thanksgiving thing where they both, obviously, Ennis gets confronted by his wife and like gets physical, but Jake Gyllenhaal's character with his father-in-law with the TV, and it's them both just being so frustrated with having to hide who they are just every day of their life, and it's all just kind of exploding at once.
And Matt, touched on the quality of the performances. That's pretty ridiculous, really. Like they were both so young, and they were both 25 or 24 when they were doing this film, and to deliver such mature performances and with so many layers, like, I thought it was just like really incredible. Like not many people can pull that off at that age. Matt, did you have a preference in terms of which actor was better in the film?
I would have definitely felt Jake Gyllenhaal's character is more accessible. Whether that was because Heath Ledger's character is meant to be so much more closed off and oppressive of his own feelings, that definitely did come across, because he seemed to be almost non-reactive to everything, to the point that you wouldn't react to simple things. But then again, that's more or less how it would be. So it's difficult for me to say. I definitely felt I could read more into Jake Gyllenhaal's acting, and as Ross said, Thanksgiving flip out was one of the more interesting parts of the interactions, and then also seeing the reactions between, like, the look between the mum to the kid as well. All these like little interactions and were really quite interesting. Like, yeah, I definitely felt that Jake Gyllenhaal gave, the performance I'd prefer more, but it's still within the scope that he was allowed within the character. So Heath Ledger did just as well. It just so happens that character is less accessible.
I think obviously, like, beside the two leads, I think both their wives give a really good performance in this film as well. I had no idea that Anne Hathaway was in this film, and I think both offer this two like totally different perspectives of how they deal with this realization that both their husbands are gay. You have Heath Ledger's wife, who you're allowed to witness her sort of like crumble and just sort of fall apart with coming to terms with it all. And then with Anne Hathaway, she seems a bit naive to it at first, but then she offers that massive, like, really strong performance where she's on the phone to Heath Ledger telling her about how Jake Gyllenhaal's dead, and she's telling his story, and that's what makes you suggest, like, I know we're about to go into it now, about the ending, that it did happen, because she's there, like, pretty much no emotion in her face, and she seems pretty happy with the outcome of the death of her husband. But yeah, I think them two give such a good performance that sort of rivals the two leads' performances on offering the audience like what you want to see, like with how those characters would sort of progress. And yeah, I think that's sort of a credit to sort of the writing and stuff like that, because the development of sort of all four of the characters mainly involved in this sort of love story just works so well.
Yeah, so thinking about Jack's death, or Jake Gyllenhaal's character's death, because either he was actually beaten to death, or it's just Ennis's worst nightmare because of what he knows about what happened to the gay people that he knew as a child. But yeah, like what Mason, you mentioned about Anne Hathaway, like, because she's pretty calm when saying that he died over the phone. When she says to Ennis that he died, she's pretty calm, and then she starts to tear up as she goes on, seemingly indicating that she knew about the gay affair. So the fact that she was calm earlier on and then tearing up because she knew about the gay affair, it always is like, I kind of feel like she was like complicit in some way to what happened. It's like, oh my God, she was angry. She found out that he was having this gay affair.
Yeah, I assumed Anne Hathaway's character had something to do with it because of the way she did react. But then at the same time, she could just be reacting like that because she knows what's going on, or she knew that he was gay. And it kind of, she was happy he was dead, but also it upset her So yeah, it's kind of hard to grasp what actually went on, and I think that's a downfall within the film. The fact it happens off screen and you're kind of left guessing, because before that everything's so kind of black and white, and then that's well, it's quite clear what's going on before that. Then that's the only bit that you're kind of like, So yeah, it is a downfall for me, but yeah, I think you assume that he did get killed because of his homosexuality, but it's kind of, I just kind of want to be sure. Do you know what I mean?
Matt, have you got any thoughts? Now I know you are similar to Ross in that you prefer to have it like made clear. I'm kind of like whatever, because the director, it hasn't confirmed either way what happened. I'm kind of all right with that. Like I'm open to trying to figure out interpretations, but I think you're a bit more similar to Ross. You just want it clear what happened.
Yeah, I'm open to having endings that are open, like we don't know what happens next, but stuff that transpires within the film that isn't cleared up usually kind of grinds my gears a bit. And we can't really tell much from the flashes of images of him getting beaten to death that Heath Ledger has when he learns of the death. We can't really learn much from that, because whether that's actual flashes from it happening or just his imagination doesn't really matter. So the only thing we really have to gauge from is Anne Hathaway's reaction on deliverance of the information. And then maybe it is a legitimate death. And then she doesn't miss her husband necessarily because she knows of the affair, and she feels like he gets what he deserves. But then she does cry because she realizes she shouldn't really be feeling like that, because now her son doesn't have a father and now she's alone. And so there's a mixture of feelings going on there. Or maybe she's just sad that she had suspicions about an affair, and now Heath Ledger ringing and then confirming about Brokeback Mountain being the happiest place he's ever been just confirms that any suspicion she did have. So it could have been anything going on there. And I just wish the director would just tell us.
When I first watched it, I just took it as the image that we see from Heath Ledger's perspective is what happened. But like I said, now we're discussing it between us. I kind of enjoy the fact that it isn't sort of black and white and told to us that it is just this way, because even just us speaking now, I totally forgot that obviously Jake Gyllenhaal's character also starts getting with Anne Hathaway's friend's husband, doesn't he? Where he meets him at the dinner party or wherever it is. They start getting together and they keep going to this like lodge and stuff like that. So you even have the possibility that she found out through that. So she could have found out that her husband had been murdered. So the murder could have happened, but it could be suggested that it could be from either ways. Like she could have found out from that other affair and then realized, shit, maybe my husband is gay and was cheating on me this whole time. Shane gets this call from Heath Ledger and then just confirms sort of her worst nightmares, which results in her phone call, her like sort of the tears that she produces and stuff, and sort of having that resentment towards Jake Gyllenhaal, because she's like, fucking hell, like it's literally all been confirmed in my head now, something that I was so oblivious to. And like you said about scattering his ashes on Brokeback Mountain, to her that's probably like the final like nail in the coffin, where she's like, great, so like everything has just been confirmed to me, and now I have this image of my husband who's been like mugging me off this entire time. So I think like when Leon first asked the question about it not being black and white and if we enjoyed that or not, and I wanted to be on more you're on Ross's side and sort of be like, no, it should just be this, because the film, arguably on first watch, the film just makes you think that is what happened. But when it comes to actual like points of discussion, it's useful that it isn't so black and white, because you can consider sort of little things to happen throughout the film.
So we can get our ratings now. Start with you, Matty.
I gave it an 8.3.
Ross?
Yeah, not as strong as the other films this week, but still a quality film. I also gave it an 8.3.
Mason?
Yeah, I think like we've discussed already, I think it sort of opened the doors to offer all of these other films to be made. And even when you're watching it, I think it has that sort of like that weight to it where you're like, God, this seems like sort of breaking the mold a bit. But I think compared to sort of what we've watched, I gave it an 8. I think it's a quality film, but it lacks what the other films have.
I gave it an 8.5. Moving on to final film, Ross's pick, Call Me By Your Name from 2017. In 1980s Italy, romance blossoms between a 17-year-old student and the older man hired as his father's research assistant. Directed by Luca Guadagnino and written by James Ivory, starring Timothée Chalamet, who was nominated for Best Actor, and Armie Hammer. It was also nominated for Best Picture and Original Song, and it won for Best Adapted Screenplay. Ross, why'd you pick this film?
So I'd seen it before, and I remember it just being like a stunning, beautiful film. It's like you're watching this boy who like seems to know everything, and he's really smart, but he's so inexperienced within his emotions. And then like an attractive older man who's experienced and well traveled and more mature comes in. It kind of it's yeah, and it makes for a really good watch. And what I really, really love about this film is like the cinematography, the color, the scenery. It's also like dreamy and just like stunning when you watch it. I found out afterwards that it was actually shot on it wasn't digitally shot, it was shot on 35mm, and I think that's what makes it look so nice. And it what kind of indulges you into the film and almost makes you feel like you're there with them. And I don't think anyone would watch this film and not kind of be like, that's like, I wish I was there right now, because it's just so stunning. And I think that's what's so great about this film. And it almost feels like you're a fly on the wall in this relationship, because it seems so normal and unfolds just like a kind of real romance. And it's kind of Elio discovering things about himself, and it makes it so different. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It's such a great film. But as I say, probably, I mean, that's one thing about all the films this week. They're all like beautiful in the way they're shot and the scenery and stuff. But I think this one in particular is just so stunning, and it's one of the colors, the green and blues used in the films are so amazing, and I love it.
Yeah, I think not shooting on digital was really effective. Like, really gives that like natural feel, and it feels like you're just with them in this like glorious summer in the 80s in Italy, or wherever, like whatever corner of Italy they're in, like just jumping in rivers, cycling around, cycling into town. It's all serene and everything. And the thing I like most is like it's a world where there's no like antagonists. No one's trying to bring them down within the film. Like everyone's just like as warm as the sun that's shining down on them. Like every conversation is pleasant. You cycle up to an old lady's house and ask for water, she'll just get it. Everyone's polite. And then even you have his girlfriend who's just completely understanding. I think May said that the other day. Like she's just so nice about the whole situation. There's no kind of, what do you mean? No. Like so understanding of his situation. And then you have maybe the nicest parent, or both parents really, but mainly the dad, because you obviously get that incredible scene towards the end when he talks about his own kind of like gay experience. And he's probably maybe the nicest parent in cinematic history, like just warm and nice to be around. May, was that something you enjoyed about the film? Me and Ross both touched on it. It just feels so natural and somewhere you just want to be.
Yeah, I was kind of a little bit jealous I didn't have a summer home in like France to go to after this. It looked really good. But yeah, as Leon said, the refreshingness of the speech by the dad at the end, how there is the film is slightly secretive to the point just both characters don't really want to admit to everyone their own feelings. More or less, they're just also hesitant to admit to each other. But that's the same in any kind of relationship, whether it's straight or gay, whether it's you don't really want to expose yourself to these feelings. So the fact that as the girlfriend and the mum and the dad were so understanding and accepting, and there was no real resistance to the relationship. I felt this film was really progressive, far more than the other three. It's almost like on the other spectrum to Brokeback Mountain. And it's really refreshing in this, and how the dad, there is not a negative word that he says. I also find it quite funny when he asks, does the mother know? And he says, I don't think so. But I think it was hinted throughout the film that the mother knew what was going on. The acting by the mum was really good as well.
I also like how effective it is as like a coming of age film, like outside of the actual relationship. Because like Elio, like he's eager to be taken seriously as an adult. Like he's only 17, but when Oliver arrives, like straight away, like he's eager to like impress him. There's obviously like a hint of like a sexual attraction, but at the start, like to me, it kind of feels like he's just trying to seem cool because he's a bit like emasculated by this guy. Like this guy's obviously older than him. Coming in, he's also very smart and having like banter with his dad. So you've got Elio, this like precocious, like rich kid, basically with a pen girlfriend. Then Oliver shows up, and all of a sudden he's getting these like confusing feelings. So I found that just fascinating how his like character developed, like irrespective of the actual relationship. Mason, was that something you were able to enjoy about the film?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think that's probably one of the strongest points of this film is the fact that it's not just this sort of modern day love story. It is, like you said, a coming of age film, and you really do get those vibes as you're watching it. Like you said, you're not sort of bound to like to the house and stuff like. You get to see him go on his. It seems so silly, like these trips like on his bike and stuff like that, but or when he goes on nights out and shit like that, you get to see him literally live his life within some northern place in Italy, and it just works so well as offering this coming of age sort of scenario, but then like on top of that, you've just got this sort of love story, sort of intertwined with it, and yeah, I mean, it was the first time I've watched it, and I already sort of want to go back and watch it. It felt like a very easy watch.
You're satisfied in the fact that Elio's learned so much about himself on this journey you've gone with him, and I think that's what this film's trying to aim for. Like, he's had this summer romance, and he's discovered so much about himself that he knows who he is now, and that's what the film is about. Teaching, as you said, it's not just a romance, it's a coming of age. It's Elio learning things about himself, and that's what I think that the ending, although he doesn't end up with Oliver, like, you wouldn't expect it to work when he's a lot older, he's in America. But yeah, as I say, it's Elio's learned so much about himself, and he's been on a journey that I think you're satisfied enough with that. And I really love the ending. Like that I don't know how long the camera's on him for when he's just sitting in the fireplace and whatever's going on in the background, but I love it. There's literally like flies landing on him and stuff, and it makes for a really good ending.
Yeah, second film that we've had a final shot where it just lingers on one character's face for an extended period of time. Matt, you have a point?
When you say that, I was thinking, apart from rom-coms, which are obviously just designed to make people feel warm and fluffy inside and make you laugh in the middle, how many films that actually leave an impression on you do the main couple actually end up together? I was thinking maybe it's not something particularly them like trying to make it a point within gay films. Just like an awful, like, you think like the oldest tale of all is like Romeo and Juliet, and they don't necessarily end up together, and if anything, it ends up quite badly for both of them. So I just thought that might be something quite interesting.
Yeah, like we were saying about the characters not getting together, like I think you kind of expect that to happen when you're first presented with both of them, because we said about this whole sort of like ticking time bomb. You know, they're limited with time. You know, realistically, one of them is in America, the other's in Italy. They're not going to be together. But you kind of push that aside with this story, and you really get engrossed in like the journey they're both going on. I know we said we touched on as well, like the age gap between both of them, with like one being 17 and one being 24. I feel like his age of being 24 is not actually said in the film. I had to search that afterwards to see what this age gap is, to see if it was a bit like questionable and stuff. But I think because we have this element of like a coming of age film, you don't really look at it as being wrong. You're kind of just there like on the journey with them, sort of experiencing it. And I think instead of like the director suggesting anything sort of dodgy going on between them because of his age, his age is used more just to see him grow as a person. Like, you have that scene where Oliver catches Elio like downstairs in the basement with, I want to say it's a grapefruit. I can't remember what fruit it is. And then he sort of comes down and he makes fun of him. And then you suddenly see Elio just like really go in on himself and start crying. And he's so strong because it's like you have this sort of older person who's trying to banter like it's not that deep. And then you get reminded of how young Elio actually is. And then, like Ross said as well, you just see Elio grow throughout. And I think the film just reminds you from time to time how young he actually is. But that's not the problem within this relationship. And that's what makes it work so well.
I think one of the most profound things that I took away from the film is something the dad said. I've only just remembered up until now. And there's the fact that what those two characters had between any two people is really quite remarkable and something quite special, and something you should take it while it's there, and kind of live your life and take the opportunities as long as they arise, because they're not necessarily going to arise to everyone. Like his dad said, he had something similar, but not on the same level. And then the next thing he said is a bit more bleak, but I thought it was an interesting line. He said, each time you lose someone, you lose a little bit of yourself, and then the next person and the next person, you have less and less love to give. And it kind of hit quite hard. And it's just interesting that it's like the first relationship that you would have had with Oliver is just the most pure, even if it's the most innocent relationship. And that's kind of like the whole film as a whole. And just, yeah, it's just quite moving as an idea.
Another thing as well with Timothy Chalamet, he learned the piano and obviously some Italian for the film. And that just adds to how much I sort of enjoy and appreciate this film, because the effort he's sort of gone through to make sure that he can deliver the best performance to his character. And considering, like, say if he didn't make that effort or even attempt to do that, I feel like the film would have lost a lot more of its ability to make us sort of like fall in love with Elio himself as the audience.
Yeah, as Mason said, going to the lengths of learning another language and then pursuing these more challenging roles, him being as young as he is and already built like the repertoire of films that he has is just crazy. Like in The King as well, like an outstanding performance.
With this film, I really enjoyed it as a standalone film and sort of accepted it as that. But obviously, it's from a book series that is adapted from a book, and there is a sequel planned to come out with the leads. And I wanted to see what you lot thought about a sequel of this film coming out, and apparently it explores what happens between Elio and Oliver like later on. Do you think that will take away from this film sort of being viewed as a standalone film, or do you think it will only just get better because then you've got a continuation of such a great story?
It mainly depends behind the motive of why they would make such a film. Too many sequels are made purely down to money. But whoever directed this film escapes me at the moment. I trust that they wouldn't direct a film unless they felt there's a story to tell. And if they feel there's a story to tell, I'll happily watch it. And it could be interesting.
I mean, I'll go see it, and it might be a good idea if it's going to work out well, but I think it's just so good as a standalone film, and it's just kind of like Elio's lesson, and you're kind of leaving the future up to him. I mean, it's kind of set up for a sequel in a way because he's like, I'll come visit again. But I just love that it's kind of, this is Elio's kind of summer romance, and that's it. But I suppose if this has been directed so well and written so well that I wouldn't doubt that the sequel would be bad.
Okay, let's get some ratings for this film now then. I'll start with you, Ross.
I love this film. I gave it an 8.9.
Mason?
Yeah, I'm the same as Ross. First time I've watched it, I think like it might not be one of the best films ever, but I actually love this film. I think it's so easy to watch. It's a coming of age film, stuff like that. So I've given it an 8.9 as well.
Matty?
I gave it an 8.6.
I'm not quite as high on it as everybody else. I don't really feel like they had a tremendous amount of chemistry as much as I like the two characters individually. But I still think it's a good film. I gave it an 8.3. Okay, let's do our ranking of the films for each of us. I'll start with you, Mason.
I really struggled to rank the films this week because obviously at the basis, they're all like these gay love stories. But you're offered totally different perspectives. So with like Brokeback Mountain, you're offered this sort of like grown man within, I think it's the south of the United States. You have that issue to sort of deal with. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is like this 18th century love story between women. Moonlight is this love story within the black community. And then obviously Call Me By Your Name is sort of this like strange like gap in between the ages and stuff. But I've went for Call Me By Your Name first, Moonlight second, Portrait third, and then Brokeback Mountain fourth.
Ross?
This has probably been like the hardest week to rank, and I think I've changed my ranking like 5 times. But I've ended up with Call Me By Your Name at number 1, Portrait of a Lady on Fire number 2, Moonlight number 3, Brokeback Mountain number 4. I think, especially in the first 3, they're really hard to rank. But no bad films this week at all, though.
May?
It's not an impossible, not gonna lie. So it just goes down to preference. And I would order them Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Call Me By Your Name, Moonlight, Brokeback Mountain.
I've gone Portrait of a Lady on Fire, number 1. Moonlight 2, Brokeback Mountain 3, Call Me By Your Name 4. Okay, in terms of our overall rankings for the films this week, we've got Portrait of a Lady on Fire at number 1 with an 8.8. Moonlight at 2. Actually, well, Moonlight or Call Me By Your Name, what's better?
Call Me By Your Name.
Moonlight.
Oh, I don't know.
Call Me By Your Name.
Moonlight.
Oh,
Doesn't help.
I'll change it. Call Me By Your Name is Caesar, isn't it?
Fine.
But it's not true. Ah, don't worry, carry on.
Therefore, Call Me By Your Name is our number 2 with an 8.7. Moonlight, number 3, also an 8.7. And then Brokeback Mountain with an 8.3 at 4. Okay, in terms of overall, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, is that better than No Country for Old Men?
Yes.
No.
no.
Calm.
Fair enough, actually.
Is Brokeback Mountain better than American Beauty? Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No, American Beauty's better.
No. So, Portrait of a Lady on Fire goes in at number 4 with that 8.8. Behind it, Call Me By Your Name, 8.7. Behind that, Moonlight, an 8.7. Then also squeezing into the top 10 at number 9 is Brokeback Mountain. So all 4 films into the top 10 this week. Higher quality. Okay. Moving on to our actor of the week. Start with you, Matty.
Yeah, I'm just going to go for Marianne from Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Mason.
I went for Timothy Chalamet in Call Me By Your Name. I think like his dedication to the role, where I said he sort of learned the piano and Italian, all just added towards him offering such a great performance, really.
Ross.
Adele Haenel, I think it is. So she's Heloise in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I think she really nails the like mysteriousness and insecurities of the character.
I also went for Adele Haenel. It was a toss-up between her or her co-star, but I thought she just edged it. Okay, the Kevin Garnett Award for a sports person who could successfully transition into acting and be in this movie in honor of KG's performance in Uncut Gems. Mason.
Okay, so I'm not actually doing a Spurs player this week. I thought I'd throw you a bit of I know, boys. Wow, I thought I'd throw you a curveball. So my film was Moonlight, and I'm switching out the crackhead mum for Paul Gascoigne. I feel like they have a lot like in common when it comes to sort of, you know, being crackheads.
Ross.
This week, swapping out Armie Hammer's Oliver and Call Me By Your Name, I put in Tom Brady, just like a tall, handsome American man.
Matty.
In Brokeback Mountain, I would replace Anne Hathaway with Jessica Buettner, which is a Canadian powerlifter.
Yeah, I know her well. I've gone for Sue Barker as the mum in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. She's got the right look. The I Wish This Was a Pop Vinyl Award. There is absolutely no way, based on the selection of films, that me and Ross have picked the same person for the 5th or 6th week in a row. Ross, what did you pick?
So I was gonna go with Elio and Call Me By Your Name, just holding a peach with cum dripping down the side of it. But instead, I decided to go for Heloise in Portrait of a Lady on Fire. You haven't actually picked the same one again. This sounds like it's fake, but we actually are picking the same ones every week. This is crazy. What the hell? I was saying to her when she's posing for the portrait. I don't know if you've done the exact same.
Okay, so I've also gone for Heloise, but in the wedding dress, you know, the recurring like shot of her in the wedding dress that Marianne keeps seeing, and then she finally turns up in the wedding dress at the end. So still, we were so close to picking the same one again, but at least it's subtly different. Okay, that wraps it up for this week. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Corona Cinema and check out our website, coronacinemapodcast.wordpress.com, where our terrible opinions live in written form. We're on Spotify, Google, Stitcher, all the popular podcast apps. Next week, doing time travel movies. Back to the Future, Looper, About Time, and Star Trek. Until then, go well.
Cheers.
Cheers. Mate, I had fucking 6 pints. You want to do a podcast?
Watching your brain try and figure out who you wanted to go for best actor was so funny.
Oh my days. You're right, mate.
Oh, fucking.
They just chose and just said it, and that was it.
You couldn't even say nails. Nails. It's like
He
five
mails
fucking letters.
He mails her.
Look at these fucking